there's lots of hop names, but like, I don't know. Azaka is kind of a weird name for a dog.
Yeah.
Or like Hercules, that could be a good one. So yeah, we're looking for something that sounded cool and also was, beer related.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's something named Brew or Indica. It's like, no, this doesn't sound right.
No, it has to make sense. It's like when you get a kid to name the dog, it's like, here, Cupcake. Like, cool. Let's go see where Poo Poo is.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to All Beer Inside. We're wrapping up our quick 3-week Muskoka, 3-interview Muskoka trip here. And joining me is Mark at Katalyst, and we are in Bracebridge, Ontario.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks
for me having you.
Yeah, thank you very much for hosting us. We always appreciate anybody who's willing to take time out of their schedule to speak with us about what I find is a fantastic creation of God. So I appreciate that. Thank you once again. And you brought me out some tasty looking beers here to try. What am I starting with?
So, you're going to be starting off. Let me just look. Okay, so you're going to be going Doc Lite, which is our sort of crowd pleaser, summer crusher, even though I hate the term. It's going to be that sort of gateway beer into lagers, or if you're Bud, Miller, Coors, Heineken, whatever, it's going to be the easiest for someone who's uninitiated into craft beer to kind of get on board with. It's not that much different than those, and they're going to be able to drink a bunch of it and still go about their day. 4%.
Perfect gateway beer for one of them BMC drinkers.
It's just like it's the gateway.
Perfect.
And it kind of sets up the rest of our lineup to kind of go from there.
Amazing. As I do. Toast. Yeah, still as good as it was yesterday when I was visiting. No, like you said, the word crushable is thrown around a lot, but that's what it is. It's sit on the dock, get on the boat, have a designated driver, have a bunch of these.
And that's the thing, like realistically, we're in Muskoka. 90% of the people, as we're kind of talking about, there's not really any transit, so 90% of the people are driving around anyway. So a 4% beer, or even the rest of our beers, most are pretty low alcohol.
Yeah.
And it enables you to be outside, do stuff, have a good time, and
still enjoy responsibly.
Yeah.
That's the important part.
And that's at the end of the day.
Awesome. So what's Katalyst's story?
So Katalyst is a brewery that myself and Crystal, who's delivering beer in North Bay today, my wife, started up in 2016. And it was kind of like she got me into beer, and that's why Katalyst is spelled with a K, not a C. And she was that catalyst that kind of drove me into this. I took it further than I think she would have expected, but she was kind of on board with doing the whole brewery, and realistically, she's put in just as much into it as I have, if not more. And we've kind of she's done all the graphics, she does all the marketing, she does all the labels, anything that's digital is Crystal's doing. I just make the beer. And yeah, it just kind of expanded on me liking beer and getting into beer, and then home brewing, and then just going more and more and more and more. And at a certain point, I wasn't thrilled with my current employment situation. Like, I was working in commercial real estate in Toronto, and it's certainly a lot of people throwing around their egos in ways that I'm sure you can imagine. And it wasn't for me, so I just kind of, I don't know, about a week before our wedding, I quit, and haven't been employed since, really.
That's a big, especially the cost of a wedding. I don't know if you did one of the classic big, 200 people wedding, or just nice and small and 20 people.
50 people, still expensive enough.
Yeah.
It was still enough.
Depending where you do it to, so you could still be coming out of the red pretty decently, especially in the wedding industry, photographer and all that stuff.
Oh, it was insane.
Yeah.
And weddings, I feel like the whole industry is predatory.
Well, friend of the show, she's a wedding photographer, so she might find offense to that. But we bug her about it all the time. So
I liked my photographer.
Yeah. So why Katalyst, and why not kind of Bracebridge Brewing, or named after another kind of old part of Bracebridge or anything like that?
So when we started in 2016, which was years before we got the physical location, we were contract brewing in Toronto. So we didn't have a location.
Okay.
And then once we sold that brand to Henderson in 2018.
Okay.
That SKU basically. And then we looked at places sort of north of the city to open up, because like real estate for industrial space basically in the city was just getting the rent. I was sitting there like, how much beer do I have to sell a month? And yeah, we stumbled into this place. But at that point, like we already had an okay following on Instagram, on all our social. People knew the story. People knew. So like it felt like taking Katalyst and just making it Bracebridge Brewing or not Muskoka Brewing, but like, or something else.
You may get a cease
or
and desist for that.
Huntsville Brewing or
yeah.
Gravenhurst Brewing or something like that. Like it just seemed like you'd lose a lot of traction.
Yeah.
Although, who knows, you might pick up people anyway.
Yeah.
It's, and we looked at all sorts of buildings, and we had options for some buildings that were kind of like probably better suited from a production standpoint. Like this building's terrible production-wise, but that's only something that affects me, which is the production side. Everyone else that we have is customer-facing, and the space is warm and it's inviting for customers, which is kind of what was most important. And kind of saw this building, pipes hanging out of the walls, bats flying around, like there was grain shoved in the walls because previously it was a grain sort of distribution or storage facility. And kind of saw the potential, the exposed brick, the semi-industrial atmosphere. I knew that the floors were rated. They already had floor drains in that actually worked.
Yes.
So I didn't have to do that. And it is right downtown. It's as close as you can get to downtown Bracebridge, which I realize is only 16,000 people. But without having to get into like a retail space right on Manitoba, which is the main drag, and having to spend who knows how much to increase the floor loads of a 200-year-old building with a wooden trussed floor. Like, we needed something concrete and something that just like, could adequately support everything.
And it's very clear, mentioned Amy. Amy set this up today, thankfully. So thank you, Amy. You pretty much built everything yourself.
Yeah. Seems to be a pattern in my life. So it was just kind of like, I've always been fairly handy. I like building stuff. I seem to do it more. I like building stuff when I have time, but I seem more recently to only be doing it when I'm under a time crunch, which is what it is. But when we were doing this, like we knew how much we had to spend and we knew it was going to be tight. Like you buy the equipment and then you're like, okay, cool. How much do I have to do everything else? And we looked at that number and we're like, shit.
Yeah.
So like you're sitting there, you're like, oh, well, I have to buy chairs. And like, I can't make plastic chairs. Like, but stuff like a bar, like you could spend 15 grand on a bar, 20 grand on a bar very easily. Ours is, I don't know, 1,200 pounds of concrete. And I polished it with like a...
like an epoxy, I guess, type of thing?
No, this is just straight polish. There's no epoxy on this. So this is going from like 80 grit to 3,000 grit with a wet polisher over like 2 days. Like all the tables, I built out of wood from a sawmill down the road. Like even, the table, not the couch, but all the racks, like all the welding I did, doors, most of the electrical, except for the critical components that you actually have to get signed off. I didn't do any of the three-phase.
I'm assuming coming to an older building too, it's like, well, this wire was okay in the 20s, but now it's not.
Like for our electrical, like our panel or our feed is in the corner over there. It was all the electrical was completely ripped out, so we didn't use any existing stuff because like I zapped myself a few times doing this with stuff that just shouldn't have been live that was.
Oh man.
So we ripped all of it out and just started new.
Yeah, my brother-in-law's an electrician. He's more than half the times he's like, this was supposed to be a dead wire. Why am I getting this tingling feeling now? So it's use professionals for some stuff for sure, like electrical and plumbing.
That's the thing, like, and there was nothing in here
Yeah.
by the time we kind of got it. So there was no plumbing, there was no HVAC, it was a shell. It had animals living in various spaces because this building had been abandoned for 10 years.
Okay.
10 years, give or take, by the time we kind of leased it. And yeah, we had a shell and knew that we had enough money for X amount of months.
Yeah.
So we had to get it done inside that time.
And then opening just prior to the pandemic.
You couldn't know what was going to
Yeah,
happen, but we opened in the winter because we're like, okay, that'll be perfect, like soft opening. We'll be doing it so that like we'll be firing on all cylinders by the time the summer season hits. And January and February are pretty good. March was starting to look up and like the sales are building, and then March, I don't know, 14th or 17th or whatever hits, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, no, we were at one of our favorite breweries, friend of the show, Kanawaki Brewing. It's like, we're there on a second anniversary. It's like, man, hopefully this COVID thing's not too crap. We're done. Like it was my last party this Saturday, and Tuesday I was working from home until further notice, which turned into, why are we renting space?
Yep.
Just work from home. You're wasting money on gas. I'm okay, boss, no problem. So, kind of speaking of that, since I'm out and vacationing, the second beer you brought me, I was seeing Vacation Voucher.
Funny enough, Vacation Voucher we released in March 2020 because after the year of build out, just opening the brewery, stuff starting to look up, we had a vacation booked to Mexico for a week. I think it was like March 22nd.
Oh, man.
So obviously that got canceled and we got vacation vouchers.
Yeah.
And eventually we got rid of the vacation vouchers because how many of those travel companies are going to exist?
Yeah.
And we had the beer in the tank as a Mexican lager, and we're like, well, guess this is what we're naming it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Vacation Voucher is kind of the next step up from Lite in that it's a little more flavorful. You'll get a little more malt balance. We mash it a little higher, so you'll get a little more residual sweetness, which helps to balance out the slight more alcohol that you get out of it.
A little bit of corn in it too for the Mexican
Yeah, a little
style
bit
lager.
of corn. Lite has a little bit of corn as well. Lite has a lot less corn than Vacation Voucher does, and that it rounds it out. I find even though corn is like super fermentable, like flake corn is, you end up getting this sort of character from the corn that makes you think it's sweeter than it is, which helps a lot if you're actually eating it with any sort of like Mexican or spicier dishes. Really helps cut through it.
Plus, you do have the salsas and chips behind us, so that's
Oh yeah,
that's a nice little...
we got a habanero salsa there.
Yeah, awesome. Toast. Nice, well-balanced corn lager.
Yeah.
It's Mexican style, and it's not like I know a lot of people are throwing in lime because they're like, oh, it's Corona. No,
Get that question all the time.
Keep it straight, man. Just
And
keep the beer the way it is.
If you really want to throw in a lime, throw in a lime. I'm not putting in like either real limes and making a hell of a lot of work for something that's less shelf stable, or fake lime. Like if you want a lime, I'm not going to be offended by it, but do it on your own accord.
What got you into brewing?
Yeah,
I mean, you said you quit the corporate gig, and what made you decide?
It was like, aside from my wife got me into beer, the brewing side of it, I think at some point, my dad was like, oh yeah, making beer is really hard. I was like, I guarantee you it's not. And it was just something I was like, buy a kit, make a beer. I was like, see, beer, look. It was probably horrible, but brewing isn't hard. It's all the sanitation and the cleaning practices. Like the physical making beer isn't as hard as many people think. It's all the front end and the back end. The brewing is actually kind of relaxing. But yeah, I started that, and then I really enjoyed doing it. I liked drinking it once I got past making horrible product, and it became a hobby. Like I was still working at that point, so you kind of get to the point where you're coming home and you need some way to de-stress, so I can spend a few hours brewing at night and like just not think about anything. And I just started doing it more and more. And I think like the last year before I started brewing professionally, I did like 20 batches at home.
Wow.
So yeah, 100, 120, 110, 120 batches, which is like, 2 a week or so. Which is a lot. Like, it's more than you can drink.
Yeah.
So you end up pouring a bunch of it, but it kind of gave the experience that I needed, I guess. And then jumping to the commercial side, not really linear. There's a lot of stuff that you have to figure out, but you just kind of figure it out. Like, we're a 10 hec brew house, which isn't huge, so it doesn't scale perfectly linearly, but it's not like going from a 20 liter batch to a 15,000 liter batch. It's not quite the same sort of exponential curve.
Yeah, that's awesome. Who decided on the hop flower logo as Katalyst's logo?
That was Crystal.
Okay.
So yeah, we had a few different versions of it. We had one initially that was kind of more oval and just kept looking at it, and I liked it. Crystal kind of looked at it, she's like, no, this is stupid. I'm like, okay. He's like, no, this is it was 3 colors, which is a nightmare for printing anything, which is something you figure out as soon as you start printing merch and stuff. Like, less colors is always more economical, especially for detailed stuff like logos. And the circle is just more inviting. It's more transferable between like a hat and a shirt and a can, and then an oval is. So we kind of ended up at that, and then we have a couple different versions of it depending on what it's going on, because some formats work better with this sort of horizontal logo, and some work better with the circle logo. Some work better just simply. And it's just kind of like even when we get onto cans, like that takes up much better space on the can than just a circle logo on what is a wrap.
Yeah, what made you decide? Because your labels are pretty much kind of uniform color and stuff like that, and the name and your naming. Like, what made you decide the logos and sticking with kind of? You do have the 2. You have the 355, except for your seltzer, which is 4.
No, that's 355. That's a 355 slim.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's just a sexier way to package seltzer.
Okay.
So generally, seltzers, we do a couple wine hybrids that we've packaged in slims, and it's just, honestly, it's a prettier format. Like, it feels more elegant. So we do that with a few brands. Passion Project is in a 473 because that's what the LCBO wants, so that's what they get.
Yeah.
And then what we don't have in the LCBO is not in 473s, because I prefer 355s.
Especially, like you said, the more crushable beers I find, it's easier to have in that 355 can. So the naming convention is pretty all over the place. Who comes up with the names?
It depends. Everyone's kind of come up with different names at different times. Like Vacation Voucher, we already said. Resilience, that was our beer. We've got, I don't know, a quarter of a keg left on tap, but that was our Ukrainian fundraising beer.
Okay.
So the can was a Ukrainian flag.
Yep.
Giorni Agnotti is an Italian Pilsner. Giorni Agnotti is the Italian version of Days and Nights.
Okay.
That's, and Days and Nights is not in German because it's not nearly as sexy. In German, Italian's German can be a sexy language, but
Italian's a romance language, just like French and Spanish.
Italian, it just flows, and like everyone that comes in says it a different way, and I'm not Italian, I have no clue how it's pronounced. But Days and Nights, that was kind of like counting down the days and nights to actually get the brewery open. Overdraft was kind of a joke at what I feel is the constant state of our bank account.
I was about to ask that. Why it's called Overdraft? Because of what it costs to run a brewery?
Road traveled has to do with where you've been, where you're going. Passion project, because you're never going to be a millionaire running a small brewery. So it is always a passion project. Dock Lite, it is a simple dock beer. Sunset, I don't know that one.
I mean, speaking of Overdraft, that's the next one in the lineup, it looks like. So tell me about Overdraft.
Yeah, so Overdraft is kind of the descendant of our original beer that we contracted when we were in Toronto. I don't own the IP for it anymore, so I'm not going to say what that beer was, but anyone that's following us knows. So it's basically a rye, wheat, and continental pilsner-based saison, fermented with a Belgian yeast at a very high temperature. So that gives you that banana, the clove. Finishes a little sweeter than average on the palate, and just that's probably my favorite beer when we release it each summer.
Okay.
So I'll just drink that, and everyone else will drink the Belgian wit and call it a day.
Awesome. Toast. Oh yeah, that's a whole lot of clove and banana.
Yep.
Your flight design, having a little magnet on the top, on the bottom to kind of put the thing in. What made you decide this and not your average tap kind of palette thing that everybody uses?
Where were we? I want to say we were in Vermont, and we went to a brewery, just stopped in at, I can't remember which brewery it was now, and saw something like this, and I was like, oh shit, that's way better. Like, we wanted something that wasn't like, was A, easy to make, B, easy to clean, and C, something that like wasn't what you see everywhere. Like, you've seen little cradles, little caddies. I know some people are doing like muffin tins. Like all sorts of different things, but we wanted some way that you could actually, like, instead of just writing like 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top, or writing something in chalk that is impossible to decipher, because there's different people working the bar at different points in time. If I'm working the bar, you're never going to be able to read my writing. And that way you can have a branded sheet that you put on it that looks a lot cleaner, looks better when you see it pop up in photos online instead of like chicken scratch, and it just looks more put together, more professional.
So with the pandemic, I'm assuming locals kind of really stepped up and started coming in, ordering online and stuff like that. Like, were the locals here to really support you guys?
We did. We had kind of a tough spot, or we were in a tough spot because we just opened. So we didn't even have much of a chance to let people know we were here yet.
Okay.
So truthfully, we sold most of our beer in the city during COVID, whether that was online orders, running it down once a month or once every couple of weeks. That's kind of how we support ourselves. I think we have a pretty good local following now, but it's something that takes a few uninterrupted months to build up. So though, like, we have lots of supporters that were out day one, and they're in the mug club, and they have been awesome. Some of them, like Rob, who's in all the time, actually wrote all the code for our keg washer, and it's above my head. You sent me a screenshot of it. I was like, looks good, great.
It's awesome. Like, having the mug club, I find it is very much a staple of smaller breweries that are like, we have our regulars, we like to have our regulars, we like to have a yearly party with our regulars. It's to me, it's just the locals showing their love to the place, and that's
the thing. Like, from what I've seen, it's more common outside of, in Ontario anyway, outside of the GTA than it is inside. Like, we have one. Sawdust has a huge one. I think Canvas has one now. So like, I don't know if Clear Lake does, but it's something where people, they can show their support, they can get something for it. Like, they take home those mugs every year, and we change up the mug every year, and they can get discounts on stuff while still kind of bringing in revenue for us, and it's just kind of a win-win-win-win all around.
When you think about it, it's almost like brewery Kickstarter or brewery Patreon type of thing. So I love the concept. I've always said if I had my own brewery, I would totally have a mug club. I would have all sorts of events and et cetera, et cetera. I'd be more project manager. Like, your wife was this end and you're the brewer. That would be me. Is I would have your wife's job and find a brewer to do everything else. So, because as Buck Brewski said, science is hard. So. So I know you have a local vineyard as well in your fridges, a Three Dog, or?
So Three Dog is actually out of Prince Edward County.
Okay.
There's not much of a wine growing region up here.
Yeah.
A lot of granite. So what we've been doing since, like we have Tide House license, so that's our manufacturing license, and then it's a liquor license kind of coupled onto it basically, which enables us to sell wine, hard liquor. We don't sell any hard liquor.
Yeah.
I'd love to do bourbon or something at some point, but for now it's wine, and we kind of feature a different winery every month or so. So we had, for between January and kind of June, Niagara wineries. Now we're into Prince Edward County. We'll move over to Essex at some point as well. And it's just something where, like, over the first 2 years that we were open, we kind of noticed that if you have a group come in, like a group of 10 people, there's always at least one person in that group that maybe they drink beer, but that's not their preference. So if you have beer and wine, you can pretty much get everyone. Every once in a while, someone's just like, I just drink like scotch on the rocks. It's like, all right, well,
here's a hazy IPA. Try something.
Here's a hazy boy. Enjoy. Like, well, I don't know. And it just, business-wise, it's a way of getting people to sit longer.
Good.
Because if one person in that group is miserable the whole time because they're just watching other people drink, it's kind of like, well, that's no fun for anyone.
No, for sure. Any local collabs where that comes with a local coffee distributor for your stouts or anything like that, or even with another brewery, any kind of collabs that you've done?
We did a coffee stout, when was that? A year and a half ago?
Okay.
I don't know, with a local roaster who's no longer around, but and that worked out well. We do a lot of collabs with Southern Ontario breweries, just because that's where where I grew up and that's where I started. So we've done some stuff with People's Pint in Toronto. We've done stuff with Reverend's Barrel Works in Cambridge. Like we have a spontaneous beer back in the Chardonnay barrel in the brewery back there that we did with Reverence in December, I want to say. We just kind of wheeled the cool ship into the parking lot and like threw a little bit of cheesecloth over it. I'm like, all right, there you go. We'll see you in a year and a half. And like stuff coming up. We might do something with Reverence again in the fall.
Cool.
We don't have a ton of tank space or a ton of time. Like at this point, we're kind of operating at capacity, which is good and bad. It's just kind of empty a tank, fill it up again, which I guess is a good problem to have.
Empty the kegs out and
you're just turning stuff kind of as quickly as you can, especially in Muskoka in the summer.
Any one or two dream collabs you'd love to do? Any brewery in North America, Europe that you could even think of? What are one of the two dream collabs?
Cantillon would be one. Just the attitude.
So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love the attitude. Just like I think it was Cantillon when they moved to the new brewery. They harvested dust and dirt off the beams of the old one. It started spraying into the new one. I was like, that's just so perfect. In Canada, Cabin would be sick. In Calgary, they're doing some really, really cool shit. They always have been. I was there March, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, those are kind of the two that I would think of offhand.
Cool. I guess we'll finish up this last beer here, the Passion Project.
So Passion Project is the workhorse. Most expensive beer to produce, and the one we sell the most of.
Yeah.
It's like I hate to say flagship because they're kind of dead in a way, but that's our hazy IPA. It's what we move the most of. So it's pretty much almost no bitterness hopping. It's all dry hop, cold side, and it's a mix of Citra, Azacca, Mandarina Bavaria, a little bit of Centennial, because for whatever reason, Centennial's been very, very fruit forward recently. And every once in a while, we'll try and get a New Zealand hop in there, but kind of when we can get them on the spot market.
Yeah. I understand your brewery dog is named after an Australian hop, to my understanding, Apollo.
Yeah. So I mean, when we got them, we were looking for names that there's lots of hop names, but I don't know. Azacca is kind of a weird name for a dog.
Yeah.
Or Hercules, that could be a good one. So yeah, we were looking for something that sounded cool and also was, beer related.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's something named Brew or Indica. It was like, no, this doesn't sound right.
No, it has to make sense. It's like when you get a kid to name the dog. It's like, here, Cupcake. Like, cool. Let's go see where Poo Poo is. It's like,
yeah.
So yeah, it was that kind of combination, right?
Yeah, brewery dogs are the best, I find, and you're clearly very dog welcoming. I don't know if you have dog treats up front with your spent grain, like some brewers do.
Normally, he eats a lot of them.
Okay. Well.
But normally we try and keep them stocked up. We have dog bowls and everything. We have one of our regulars has like 150-pound noof that's in all the time. So we have a bigger dog bowl for him.
Yeah.
Because he's like, you need like 4 liters of water for that dog, whereas like tiny little dog can just use a regular bowl.
Small little bowl.
But yeah, it just kind of enhances, like it fosters community. Again, as long as they're well-behaved dogs. We haven't had too many that aren't, but it has happened.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of the community aspect too, I like to ask, so ourselves were in from out of town, we came here, but let's say this was my first stop and I didn't do any research outside of you, friends in the area to try when it comes to other beer.
Oh, so, yeah, so I mean, we've got 6 breweries in Muskoka right now. I think there's one under construction, but that's kind of been rumored for a couple of years. Canvas in Huntsville is great. That's probably the best patio out of all the breweries. I don't really want to shit on my own patio, but like they have a 2-story patio overlooking the water. I'm like, well, I can't compete with that. Like Jeff and Steve.
You can watch the train from mine.
Like, all right, there's a choo-choo. Well, yeah, Jeff and Steve are doing really great beers there, and they do all sorts of events and stuff because they have this big event venue with a separate bar, which is key.
Yeah.
Sawdust is always doing great stuff. They have been for, I guess, 10 years now.
Yeah, close to a decade.
I think they were 2012.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
2012 contracting, 2014 where they are right now.
So yeah, they're always doing great stuff. I'm in there fairly often. Clear Lake is putting out some decent stuff these days, which is nice. And then who else do we have? If you go like a little further towards Perry Sound, Trestle's got a killer setup. The beer's excellent. That's another wicked patio overlooking the bay and the river, and like they're elevated so you see everything. It's like, oh man, I should have considered my patio more.
I mean, mentioning like your patio, I was at job site in Stratford, and it's the same thing. I got to stare at the train.
Yeah.
So, but it's like good local beer, and having family in Kitchener, Stratford's only 45 minutes away when I'm visiting them.
Yeah, job site in. I think they're in the old timber mart. Yeah, beside the distillery. Yeah, I
missed out on the distillery, but I hit a bunch of the breweries in Stratford, which was
Junction
nice.
46 or something like that.
I unfortunately missed out on those.
Pretty good.
I'll have to visit my family, and by visit my family, I mean grab my brother-in-law and go drink good beer. So
that's where my family lives too.
It's great. So you're clearly extremely busy. I'm assuming you don't have much time. But if there's time for you and the wife to take 2 weeks off and take...
Sorry.
This isn't the only time that I've been laughed at about this question. Let's say somehow a miracle 2 weeks opens up where the world's not going to catch on fire if you leave for 2 weeks. That beercation you've never taken that you'd love to.
I really want to go tour through France and Belgium from the beer, well, also wine, but the beer perspective.
Yeah.
I'd really like to see a couple of those like really, really old monasteries and sort of older Trappist breweries, because like the last one in North America closed, or is closing. They're not closed yet, but they announced that they're, which is kind of shit. Just drink more interesting beer, people. That would be really, really cool. I'd like to do Germany again. I've done it. Last time I did it, I wasn't of legal drinking age, but it was still a very cool beer experience.
Yeah.
So not as interested in Oktoberfest or anything like that, because it is effectively just a giant frat party.
Yeah. Plus, you have 1-2 hours away in Kitchener.
Yeah, and like Kitchener is the same idea.
Yeah.
But seeing really, really old world breweries, like breweries that have been around for 100, 200 years, like things where you can find a piece of equipment that's been in use for a couple centuries.
Yeah.
Like stuff with history, where like in North America, we don't really have that. We have a little bit of history, like 40 years. But even then, that's like Sierra Nevada or New Belgium or...
Because even, I mean, based in Montreal, it's like the birthplace of Molson, and it's like, well, the facade of the building's still old, but inside's all different.
Yeah, inside it'd be all new equipment.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is 300 years old, but we actually threw all that stuff out.
Yeah,
like
it's unfortunate.
They did that a bunch.
Yeah.
And even like some of the original craft brewers in Ontario, like they don't really exist in the same capacity anymore. So there's not that much history, and I don't know. I'd like to see places that have more of that story.
Yeah, that's Jordan St. John's book, The Lost Breweries of Toronto.
Good book.
You know, I bought it. I still haven't read it. That's on my list. So I'm
Read
busy.
it. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So
Like-
I love the history. It's you're finding out even the Canada's history. It's like finding out Kitchener used to be named Berlin, and that's why they have the festival. It's like what?
Yeah.
I had no idea until this year that it was used to be that. So
I think there's still a town in Ontario called Swastika. Like there's lots of really, really bizarre stuff surrounding.
Yeah. No, just driving up here, reading some of the names, we're like, oh, that's not very PC. That's
No.
not very PC.
No,
So-
there's a few, and like I drive quite a bit just
Yeah.
between delivering beer and stuff like that, and you'll drive around and be like, oh,
Yeah.
no.
Come on, Canada, time to wake up.
Like-
At least the small, Swastika, Ontario, I can't see being more than like 3,000 people down. So
it's not.
It's pretty wild. But the history of Canada is a wild, wild thing to find out that
Yeah,
where it's been,
it's
where-
certainly got
Yeah.
some really rough stuff.
we could do better.
We certainly can.
Some people are trying to do better, and that's the important part. So, from everything from you're the same culture as all the other breweries. Is we want anybody to drink here. We don't care if you're white, black, brown, purple. If whoever you love. Just everybody can enjoy craft beer. This is the color of the palette rainbow. We
Yeah,
want the
like
color of the
there's
rainbow
no
here.
reason to be exclusive, and I
No.
think some of that, some people are just assholes.
Yeah.
And that's like on all of our cans, if you look closely, it says don't be a dick. All of our cans except the LCBO can,
Yeah.
because that wouldn't go through. But it's really, really simple. If you
Yeah.
want to oversimplify it, it's like just be nice to people.
Yeah.
Like have an open mind, be nice to people, and you can always have a conversation. And I fuck up all the time, always have. And if you're open to learning, and if you're open to actually bettering yourself, then I think most people are quite receptive to it. And yeah, we'll never be the ones to shit on you, and if we do, let us know.
Yeah, and that employee should no longer be here, in a sense. You can always be better.
Yeah,
That's-
you're never done improving, and that goes for your personality,
Yeah.
that goes for brewing, that goes for everything you're doing. Like there's absolutely no finish line unless you're dead, right?
Yeah, exactly. Amazing. What's next for Katalyst as a brand?
I don't know.
I mean, you're kind of really just coming out of the pandemic when you think about it. So
This is the first like open summer we've had, which has honestly been great. Hectic, but great. We have some cool stuff coming up. We've got a whole series of lagers coming up. Like we do a lot of lagers anyway, but for Muskoka Oktoberfest, we have more. Like we have a stone beer, we have a Rauk beer, we have all sorts of like really nice old European lager styles. We're doing a lot of fruit beers. We're trying to get a fruited sour into the LCBO now, which is the peach sour that we've got on right now, Sunset. Whether it'll be called that who knows. There's so much to do before then.
Yeah.
We should be launching our spontaneous beer probably in December. 'Cause theoretically, to be method traditionnel, it has to be a year in the barrel, which is fine. So that's exciting. It's tasting pretty interesting right now, about 7 months in, which we're really excited about. We'll got some new pale ales, new IPAs coming out. We have a few sort of seltzer-based mixed drinks like mojito. We've got a peach version of that coming out soon as well. We're just gonna keep mixing it up.
Keep on keeping on?
Yeah.
If the option were there, if one of your 2 neighbors were to move out and the landlord's like, hey, you want the next space, would you knock down that wall and expand?
I'd certainly think about it.
Yeah.
It depends. I know over there, they're killing it over there.
Yeah.
But it's, I'd have to see if I can put any tanks in there. Because some of the units are pretty small.
Okay.
You need, like, we've got a decent amount of expansion room in the back there. Like where our brew house is, we have like a 23-foot clear height on the ceiling.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I can
big,
put like
big
100 hec tanks
Yeah.
in there if I needed. So it's not as much of an issue there. So
Amazing. Awesome. I have another question. Thank you very much, Mark, for taking time out of your schedule. Once again, we're going to thank Amy when we see her, again, for setting all this up. For those who are looking for you guys physically and online, where can the audience find you?
Yeah, so we're in Bracebridge at 13D Taylor Road, which is at Taylor in Manitoba in downtown Bracebridge. Online, katalystbrewing.com. Instagram is all at Katalyst Brewing, all lowercase. And yeah, we're usually pretty quick to respond to stuff. Usually pretty attentive.
As said, we set this up in less than 24 hours for this interview. So it's amazing. Thank you once again for taking time in your schedule to speak with us. For us is allbeerinside.com on the website, at allbeerinside on all social media. Everything's going to be in the show notes. And as I say at the end of all episodes, drink craft, not crap.